Hi, my name is Andy Brady, and I will be reading Chapter 3 of A New Beginning, the story of my adoption, life, and service, illustrated by Eric C. Brady. Chapter 3. I rode the bus to my new school, Mineola High School. The bus picked me up and dropped me off on the corner near my house. It was its last stop in the afternoon. I enjoyed school. In homeroom, I sat next to a boy. His name was Stuart. He had long, curly, and wavy hair like I did. He was cute and genuinely nice. We were in the same homeroom for 4 years. In freshman year, I took general science, algebra, social studies, English, and French. I thought general science was boring. I liked algebra better than I liked regular math. I enjoyed the rest of my classes, especially French. Stuart was in my French class along with Andy. The teacher gave us all French names, and poor Stuart was given Claude as his French name. The, our teacher told him there wasn't a French name for Stuart. The other kids picked on Stuart and called him Claude instead of Claude. Stuart learned to hate French class. One day in general science, we had a substitute teacher. She was old, and some students threw spitballs at her when she was writing on the board. She would then turn around and scream at us at the top of her lungs. One of the boys made a sound like the bell, and she thought the period was over, so she let us out early. Fortunately, our regular teacher was back the next day. Because I went to a public school, I had to take CCD, Confraternity of Catholic Doctrine. I went to several classes during the week. I complained to my parents because the CCD classes offered to teenagers was a joke. The teacher had us sit in chairs around a table and we would discuss being teenagers and how it related to being Catholic. The problem was that the other students, and particularly the boys, would throw paper airplanes at other students and the teacher ignored them, and she did nothing to rein them in. I talked to my parents and then stopped going to CCD classes. I was surprised that my parents allowed me not to go to CCD classes because they forced my older brother to attend the classes when he went to high school. When the CCD administrators called my parents, they gave them some excuse as to why I stopped taking the classes and told them that I wouldn't be back, and that was the end of that. My niece Laura was born in 1970. My brother Bob was still in Vietnam, and my sister in law was living with her parents, Jack and Elizabeth, until Bob came home. It was an exciting time for me. I was an aunt at the age of 16. Betty showed me how hold Laura properly. I got a chance to hold her for a brief time and even occasionally fed her. Laura was beautiful. She had blonde hair and blue eyes just like her mother. One day while I was visiting Betty's parents, Jack was holding Laura. Laura was wrapped in a baby towel awaiting a bath. While Jack was holding Laura, she peed on him. Jack was so shocked that he held Laura away from himself, and Laura stopped peeing. Jack figured she was finished and pulled her back in to hold her close, and she proceeded to finish her peeing. Jack then handed her off to Betty for her bath. Jack went to quickly change his clothes. We all laughed about it later. Jack Conrad was a fireman. He later became fire chief. His oldest son, Jack, was a fireman too. Smack was a big problem at times. He would obey when he wanted to obey. If you tried to correct him, he would growl at you. What always bothered me was that when I was washing dishes in the kitchen sink, Smack would come up behind me, stand on two legs. He would put his paws around my waist and try to hump me. Smack did protect me from Aunt Rita. She was a nice person and grand sisters, but at times she would yank hard on my hair for no reason at all. One time when Aunt Rita did this, Smack stood next to me and growled at her. Aunt Rita never pulled my hair again. My sophomore year, I took biology, social studies, English, French, and geometry. I took choral music. Mr. B taught biology. The first day of class, Mr. B divided the class into groups of three. I had two girls that were in my group, and they insisted that I be the one to do the dissecting because they didn't want to touch any of the animals. One day, Mr. B brought in live frogs for the class to look at. He had to explain to the boys in the classroom that we were not going to dissect live frogs. The boys were all disappointed. That day was fun because we got to hold the frogs. Mr. B explained how to put the frogs to sleep by putting them on their backs and rubbing their bellies. In class, we got to dissect earthworms, frogs, crawdads, among other animals. There came a day when one of the girls decided that she wanted to dissect the animal instead of me. She complained that I always dissected the animals, forgetting that she and the other girl insisted that I dissect the animals. She dissected the animal and butchered it. We ended up having to get another animal to dissect because after she dissected the first animal, there were no discernible organs left to study. The next animal was dissected by me as I would not allow her to dissect another animal ever because of the way she butchered the first animal. I looked at it this way. Dissection is like surgery on a dead animal that you must be incredibly careful so that you can remove the organs without destroying them, so you can study them. You have to be careful how you cut and where you cut. I enjoyed biology more than I enjoyed general science. In choral class, we not only learned to sing as a choir, but we learned to appreciate music and learn the different types of music. I have a weird ability in that I can match someone else's voice when I sing, but I cannot match the tones on instruments with my voice. I cannot distinguish the subtle differences of the notes on any instrument. The teacher tried to get me to match the keys on a piano, which I was unable to do. Even though I passed the class, the teacher told me to never take choral music again. In social studies, instead of having individual teachers teaching history in social studies, we studied packets. After we finished the packet, we signed up to take a test so that we could move on to the next packet. I enjoyed it because it allowed me to advance at my own pace without interference from others. I had several problems in that class, not with the curriculum, but with other female students. There were three girls that while I'd be studying a packet, they would sit across from me and throw stones underneath the desks at my feet and legs. One day, as I was starting a new packet, which was on war, I was told that I was to go to a classroom to be tested on that packet. I hadn't signed up to be tested because I hadn't started the packet yet. I went to the classroom, took the test, and passed. The teacher asked me afterwards where the packet was I had finished for him to sign. I explained to him that I hadn't even started the packet yet. He asked me why I signed up for the test if I hadn't even finished the packet, as that was not allowed. I explained to him that I didn't sign up to take the test. Someone signed me up to take the test. He told me that he would give me a passing grade on the test only on condition that I finished the packet and presented it to him when I was done. He also told me that I got 100% on the test. In French class, our teacher would sometimes tell us stories about his travels in Europe. He told us about a trip he made to Russia. He said it was a beautiful country. He also told us that while under communism in Russia, all people are equal, some are more equal than others. He told us about going on a ferry which had a private room that was strictly for use by the officers of the Communist Party. There, these officers were provided the finest in food and drink and comfort. It was very eye-opening. In English, I took writing poetry, which I thought thoroughly enjoyed. The teacher, Mrs. F., taught us different styles of poetry and different ways of writing poetry. We were tasked with writing at least one poem in each new style that we learned. We learned how to write a haiku, ocean, the ocean roaring as waves waves crashing on rocks, soon becomes silent again. We also learned how to write limericks. Untitled. There once was a girl named Veronica who loved to play her harmonica. She played all night till the dawn's early light, so they took away her harmonica. At the end of the year, we had to write a book of poetry with pictures to complement our poems and submit it for a grade. I made up a book of all the poems I had written from the time I was in eighth grade up until present. I cut pictures out of the magazines to put on pages opposite of my poem that would highlight the subject of the poem. An example of this was pictures of people together in groups to highlight my poem, Friends. Friends. There are two types of friends. One is the acquaintance, the person you just say hello to on the street, the person you discuss war, politics, and drugs with in passing. The other is a close, true friend, the person with whom you share experiences such as joy, sorrow, likes, and dislikes, the person who's there when you need him. There's one sure way to tell acquaintances from true friends. That is when you have a real problem, your true friends come around and help. Everyone is your friend when everything is rosy. I showed the book to my father, and for whatever reason, he was against my giving the book of poems to my teacher to be graded. My father said that poems were personal and not to be shared with other people. He was afraid that sharing poems meant that people judged you, and that worried him. I found out years later that he had been picked on when he was younger. He was worried I would get picked on because of my poetry. I was proud of the poetry that I wrote, and I wanted to share it with others. During the year, I shared some of my poetry that I was writing with my friend Stuart, and he was kind enough to tell me that he liked my poetry. I received a particularly good grade on my book of poems titled Remembrances and Beliefs. The teacher would have given me a higher grade if I had shot the pictures I had used with a camera instead of cutting them out of magazines. Another English course I took was business English. We had to break up into groups of four and form a company. Each of us had to take a CEO position: president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. I took the office of treasurer because I did my father's books for his gas station. Teacher explained to us about stocks and running a business. Teacher and I did get into an argument. She thought that buying stocks was better than gambling your money away. I told her investing in the stock market was gambling just as much as horse racing or cards. She told me that it couldn't be gambling because you had to research the companies that you're investing in before you even invested your money. I told her that when you go to the racetrack, you get a program with all the races and all the horses that are running in each race. The program tells you all about the horses, what conditions they run in, best, who their sire and dame are, and the position they came in the last four races they ran, such as first, second, third, or fourth. I also told her even with that information, you can bet on a horse and it can still lose. Just like investing in stock, it may look good, but you could still lose your money on it. My least favorite class was geometry. I thought it was boring, and the other problem that I had with it was understanding different theorems and axioms. Theorems are considered the absolute law in geometry with no exceptions until there is an exception. I found it very confusing. I have to say I enjoyed algebra much more. I wasn't fond of gym mainly because I got picked on by some of the other girls in gym class. One of the sports I enjoyed was field hockey. Biggest problem I had with field hockey was my size. I weighed between 112 and 115 pounds. One time, another teammate and I went after the same girl on another team to take the ball from her. Unfortunately, when we ran into each other at full speed, I was the one that ended up on the ground because I was so skinny. I was usually the last to be picked for a team. The worst was playing volleyball. The girls on my team would get upset if I either missed the ball or didn't try for the ball. Sometimes I would aim for the ball when it was coming, and if I didn't hit the ball, they would yell at me. Then, if I thought other girls were going to get the ball, I didn't go for it, and they missed the ball. It was my fault. One day, one of the girls mentioned that I should shave my legs and start picking on me for it. I never thought about shaving my legs as I had blonde hair on my legs and my arms and didn't think that it was that noticeable. I'm going to end it right there, and I will continue tomorrow. And I hope everybody has a happy Sunday. And you can go to Amazon.com and search for Ann V. Brady, and it will take you to my book, A New Beginning, the story of my adoption, life, and service. And please buy the book, and I hope you have a happy Sunday.